September. Standing atop an empty rail car, you gaze out at the countryside before you. The ground is nothing but mud as far as your eye can see. There are no trees anywhere. There are no towns, no villages, no parks, no gardens, no anything except mud and mud-covered men and equipment vainly trying to make order of their world. Muddy soldiers march past, careful to avoid the muddy trucks and carriages trying to pass them along the road. Muddy horses and pack animals navigate the pathways set aside for them as muddy wagons continually slip and slide in the muck. Muddy trenches and shell holes contain piles of muddy debris and mud-covered corpses. One piece of machinery stands out from the scene. It's a new invention, just arrived from the factories back home, and is about to join the front lines for the first time. A tank. A what? A tank, the sergeant near you says. Don't ask me where they got that name from. Might as well have called it a bucket or saucepan. I've never heard anything called a tank that didn't hold water. You watch the oddly shaped metal vehicle slowly lumber down the road. Black smoke belches out of its exhaust pipe. 6-pounder cannon poke out of either side of the vehicle. A steering tail made up of 2 large metal wagon wheels pokes out the end. The tank itself has no wheels, only a track on either side that rolls down the back and then up the front again before snaking around to do it all over again. It makes an awful racket. The whole thing looks like a metal trapezoid, almost like a moving body that has neither arms, legs, or head. A lieutenant takes a moment to evaluate your progress. "Well, Calvin," he says, "good to see a stretcher bearer who has spent his time carrying others around instead of having to be carried himself. What?" "What, sir?" you ask back. The lieutenant just shakes his head. "Every man has his role," he continues, "and yours is as important as any. In fact, you've earned a field promotion to corporal. The officer hands you a stripe for your sleeve. Now you have 2. You're happy for the recognition, of course, but you're even more happy that for the little bit of extra money His Majesty's government will now be paying you for every month you continue to live. How long is that gonna be? Who knows?" Eventually, the lieutenant and his fellow subalterns assemble B Company together. You have a new captain, and he's about to make some sort of announcement. He'll have to shout a bit to be heard over the incessant thunder of the guns. "Men," the captain begins, "we have come to this sector of the front to assist in taking a place called Courcelette. You'd seen the name written down, and you're pretty sure it hasn't been pronounced the way the captain said it. French seem to ignore most of the consonants, as best you can tell. Yet the captain almost made it sound like Flaire's Courcelette, which you admit sounds intriguing or appetizing. Anyway, the captain continues, you've heard enough of these speeches by now to give them only passing attention. They're like the safety drill on a steamship, blah blah lifeboats blah blah. The private next to you offers you some of the food he's eating, watermelon or cantaloupe. I'd say cantaloupe. Yum, it helps pass the time. One of the other soldiers who came with the captain is standing nearby, and he begins giving you and your comrades a brief primer on the man. He's a lawyer by trade, the soldier says to looks of feigned horror. Something about the word lawyer makes everyone act as though they want to shoot him themselves. Maybe he'll actually survive a day's fighting for once, you say, referring to the fact that your captain keeps getting killed. In fact, he's a decent fellow, the soldier answers. Gave a wounded Jerry some water, helped another man out of the mud, and ordered a double rum ration for our last company on his wife's birthday. The soldiers all agree that this last act qualifies the captain for immediate sainthood. Life is about priorities. You devote the next day to trying to find some place to hide. Dugouts provide some shelter, as do the firing steps on the inside wall of your trenches. The conditions inside those places are often awful, however, so it's not simply a question of finding something covered and then crawling into it. The first time you took a nap, you awoke to find a hungry rat sitting on your chest. You're not sure, of course, but you suspect it was getting ready to eat your nose. Then, the tanks advanced. Watching them, you were amazed at how they moved across no man's land and into enemy fire. Just doing that little task was something tens of thousands of soldiers had lost their lives vainly trying to accomplish these past few months. It was simultaneously uplifting. This looked like a real breakthrough, and shattering. What a waste those earlier advances have been. How might the 1st of July have been different with these tanks in the vanguard? After a while, both extremes settled back towards the mean. The tanks bogged down, the Germans rallied, and the line stabilized again. Tanks, or armored cars as General Haig calls them, might carry the day sometime in the future, but in their present, they are still just one of many weapons being used here. Meanwhile, the casualties just piled up. You watched one tank make some startling progress until the Jerries pulverized it with medium artillery and anti-aircraft guns. Another came under fire from a strafing German airplane and exploded right beside an advancing machine gun platoon. Between these spectacular events and the more mundane bloodletting going on across the front line, you and your mates were kept busy all day. This exhausting routine finally came to a sudden end when a German counterattack caught you out in no man's land. 1 second you were trying to reach a wounded Tommy, and the next you find yourself diving into a crater to avoid Bosch machine gun and artillery fire ravaging the landscape. The other stretcher-bearer, including Morgan, were killed in the attack. Wow, Morgan was a few yards behind you as the two of you tried to scurry through the mud, and he was blown to smithereens by a 5.9 that landed pretty much right on top of him. It's a hastily arranged outpost, and you're still stunned to be here. Perhaps you shouldn't be. It's dusk when the enemy often attacks, and at your location so far forward you are always going to be vulnerable to an overwhelming counterattack. The front line has never been static. You take a moment to look around. Whiz-bangs are going off nearby. First one, then another, then a third. You're going to have to protect yourself from the shrapnel. Other soldiers are diving into the crater, and soon there's at least half a dozen of you in there. You're a stretcher-bearer turned corporal, of course. All in all, your group consists of you, plus a veteran Tommy, a machine gunner, a gunner from a shot-down airplane, a runner separated from his command, and a clerk. Then another soldier jumps in, another infantryman, but this one immediately looks fresher than the rest of you. His gear is arranged differently, and his movements are less instinctive. It's clear that he's new. Those are the living. There are also dozens of dead strewn about, mostly Germans killed when the mine actually went up, who were then simply abandoned during the confusion to rot. You'll have to be careful not to get too close to the shattered bodies. You have experience in that sort of thing, though. It's not exactly an unusual problem. Now for the bad news. Nighttime is fast approaching. It's getting colder, and your group is low on ammunition and low on food. The crater's floor is already drenched in water. The water table is so high around here that any deep hole gets waterlogged quickly, and sanitary conditions are going to be a genuine problem. You're going to have to make some tough decisions tonight if you want to survive. Great! That's just great! I'm looking forward to dying in a dug-out hole after a grenade blow up, or a mine in this case. Great! Just great.